see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Hi, it's Edwin Rutsch, and this is Dialogues on How to Build a Culture of Empathy. And today I'm here with Bob Koehler. We're going to talk about empathy. Thanks for joining me, Bob.
Great to be here, Edwin.
So just to give a little bit of background about you, you're a journalist, a reporter, editor, columnist, and writer, and I see also peace journalist. And the way that I got connected with you is I saw an article you posted on Huffington Post, and it was titled Geopolitics of Compassion. And it's basically, I think, saying we need to move from an military empire to more of a culture of compassion. And then also saw your website, which I'll show here on the screen, Common Wonders, Co-Creating a Culture of Peace. And there you said, if we believe in a society that is more humane, more empathy-driven than the one we have now, we are on our own and easily marginalized by the powers that be. This is our challenge, to find one another and start building a humane, sustainable future. And so since I'm working on a culture of empathy, I think we found each other.
Yeah, we found each other. Yeah, so here we go. I think that's what it's all about. And so that's why I was excited when I got your email. Okay, sounds like somebody that is very much doing something, in the realm where I believe in, with a great deal of passion.
Yeah, and you also have a book. It's called Courage Grows Strong at the Wound, and I'll just show that on the screen here. It's on your home page or on the publications page.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to talk about was how do we build a culture of empathy, but I thought we'd start with just your personal values. What's your most important value?
Okay. Well, that's a very challenging question. I don't normally think, what's my most important value? I just live my life. But you had asked me that question in advance, and I wrote down a bunch of values, and that included honesty and courage, truth-telling, joyous appreciation of life, creativity. But the very first one I wrote down was respect. And I decided that is my most important value, in the sense that I think it's the core value. I mean, it's the core, it's the beginning. Every connection, every relationship begins with respect. I mean, if there is no respect, if I am, the neighborhood bully, or I'm, whatever, the playground bully, and I see you and I push, I beat you up and I mock you and all that, there is no relationship is built. It has to, the egos have to stop and slow down. We look at each other, eye contact. I mean, respect maybe begins with eye contact, listening, openness. Respect is the link that connects two separate people, two separate entities, two separate cells, whatever we are. And so that's what, it occurs to me, that is my most important value.
Mm-hmm. I'd asked you before, how respect became important to you, and you had started telling me a story about that, like how.
Yeah. Well, right. You were saying, well, did my parents drum it into me? Did was I did it happen when someone didn't respect me? And really, the stories that I thought about were all stories in which I had shown disrespect in one way or another to someone else. That's when it hit me with a jolt. I mean, if I'm disrespected, bullied, or mocked or something, I mean, lots of emotions flare up, and they're usually anger or shame, but they don't. It's not like, I'm not getting respect. But when I disrespect someone else, there is a specific kind of jolt of awareness that is very troubling. And the first story I thought about was as a boy. maybe I'm 8 years old and we're down in my basement. Me and this other kid are playing and we get mad at each other, and the kid is a little younger than me and I'm bigger. So I knock him down, I push him down, and I'm on top of him so that like his arms are pinned, and I slam his head on the floor. Now I know, I hope I only did it once, but this is many years ago. This is my childhood. I still feel that action. I still hear his head hitting the floor. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing to think about, and I think every time I am tempted, to let anger, create, determine this relationship with another person, I think about beating this little boy up, and it just horrifies me. And I think thinking about that moment and other moments that's when the idea of respect actually starts to come alive for me. Oh my God. Not that long ago, I was at the post office. I was angry at the person, the postal, worker, because of the form I had to fill out to send a package overseas. And I was starting to complain about it to her, in just, in a very angry and disrespectful way towards her. It's not her form. Suddenly she just gets up, walks away from her station, and says, "I can't take it anymore." And I'm just left standing there speechless. And I went, oh my God, what a terrible thing I just did. I just, totally violated the law of respect and broke and shattered that relationship. It was horrible. And and there's been, hopefully not too many in my life, but I remember those things, and they're the things. There's a jolt of awareness that drives it home to me. Don't wreck the relationship. Keep that relationship viable, and then if there's a problem, work it out. But first, lay the groundwork for respecting the other person, and then hopefully that person will lay the same groundwork towards me. But nothing happens. Nothing happens. We remain disconnected entities if there's no respect.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm really interested in how all these different values relate to empathy, because I'm seeing we need a culture of empathy. So perhaps we can explore the relationship of respect and empathy. But before we do that, maybe we can just look at the value of empathy.
Yes.
And one way I find that's kind of interesting to look at a word like empathy or experience is to do it metaphorically.
Yeah.
So, empathy is often defined as standing in someone else's shoes, looking through someone else's eyes. And for me, empathy is like a cornucopia in the sense that it has a richness of experience. I can feel other people's experience, and they become my experience, and it enriches my life.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, for you, what is your metaphor of what empathy is like? And you can't use the standing in the shoe one, because we want your own creative, personalized metaphor.
Right. Well, as I thought about this, I mean, the word that kept coming up is oneness, a sense of oneness. And I think, oneness begins with respect, and it grows and it grows. And the growing relationship is the deepening of empathy, to the point where somebody hurts themselves and you feel it. I would say, if, I don't know if that quite is a metaphor, but in a sense, that is my metaphor. I feel your pain. I mean, and I know that's a cliche from the Clinton era. I apologize for that. But, when we were talking earlier, I was thinking, okay, a loving couple, and they've been together for a number of years, a long time. And, and they've kept the relationship alive and vital and viable, and it's at the point where, my wife hurts herself, and I can feel it. It is so, I'm so deeply attached. I mean, as someone has said, a married couple is attached at all 7 chakras and that sort of thing. Not that I'm necessarily into that way of thinking, but I like that, that idea. And so I think empathy is feeling a oneness, becoming a oneness with the other person. I mean, we will always remain in a certain sense separate, but we grow in our oneness. And to me, to the point where, your pain and your joy also is my joy, and that sort of thing. And maybe I feel your joy is even a better thing than I feel your pain. I mean, anyway, that as I think about that, as I think about trying to put empathy into a metaphor, that's the best I can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be what rings in my mind as I think about it.
Yeah, the sense of kind of oneness and a real deep connection.
Yeah, deep connection and surprising connection, and I mean, you hear about a married couple, and they'll answer for the other person almost, and not that that's necessarily a great thing, but it's like they know each other in such a profound way that so much is is stirred together. It's intermingled, it's interlaced with one another.
Well, yeah,
and problematic in some ways too, but that's still it's not that empathy is maybe necessarily a value that doesn't need to be offset with other aspects as well, but I think that's just a crucial part of every connection, is that it grow with empathy,
mm-hmm.
and it grow in empathy.
Well, one thing I look at is too, what do those feelings actually viscerally feel like? How would you compare the feeling, kind of like the felt sense of respect and the felt sense of empathy in your body? What's the physical sensation of those?
Well, it's joy, it's health. It's a very, health was the first word that came to mind.
Healthy, kind of feels healthy.
Yeah. It's like, just this enormous sense of joyful oneness with creation, which is it's the essence of what health is. Now, here's an odd memory. Or maybe it will seem almost, polar opposite of what I'm saying. Now, I'm a widower. I lost my wife to cancer. And, 10, 12 years ago now, being at her side, as she passed, was probably the most profound feeling of empathy and peace that I've felt, that I can remember feeling ever in my life. And she had cancer, and I felt, and as I sat there, and it was clear that this was the moment she was passing. She suddenly, the pain furrows on her face loosened, and something profound happened, physically to her, and I was holding her hand, and she was not communicating with me. That was not where. She was not capable of that. She was just lying in the bed, but there was, and then her face seemed to kind of glow with a certain radiance. I can't imagine a more profound feeling than that, a more profound experience. And so I guess, your question is, what does it feel like for me? Well, I feel what I think my wife was feeling, which was this kind of a radiant connectedness to the universe. And that's, in my humanness, I can only approximate that feeling. But I think that is the feeling, and it's physical as well as spiritual, emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so it's just it's like a deep sense of presence and togetherness.
Yes. Uh-huh. Right, exactly.
And respect, how does that kind of fit in? Because for me, respect has more of a structural rigidity to it. It's something a little different.
Yes.
Because
Right.
that's like almost like a merging with someone, right? It has a warmth to it and a
Well,
uh,
yeah, I think empathy is the deeper and the larger emotion. Respect is that first link, as you know, the link in the chain, you know, and so it's not it is more of a structural bond, you know. Yeah, but it's still necessary to maintain it, even with old friendships. You know, there something can come up that just, you know, shatters the friendship, or makes it, you know, careen because of, you know, with emotion on both sides. We have to rediscover that reconnect that respect and reconnect, and then kind of build back the relationship, which I've, you know, had to do, you know, from time to time with people that I deeply care about and have, you know, been friends for years, and something has happened. So I agree. Respect is sort of the structure, the structural emotion. But without that, we're separate. We're not going to build empathy, you know, me being me and you being you, and we're stuck, you know, unconnected to each other. Empathy only builds when we create the link, which happens by respect. By you know, another word for respect maybe is, or part of what respect is trust. I have to trust myself with you. I have to trust my vulnerability, and maybe we do a little bit at a time, but I'll trust a secret, and then you will confide, you know, a secret or a truth, and so the respect and the trust grows, the respect grows, and then empathy starts to grow from that.
well,
Um,
for me, it's, you know, what I'm really looking at with, you know, the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and personally
yeah,
is like, how do we transform society to to raise the value of empathy within society? And I think that's what your article was about too, right? It's like you want to raise, you know, you quoted, I think it was Karen Armstrong about Charter for Compassion, the need for more compassion in society. So what would you say are kind of ways that we can, you know, raise the value of empathy within society?
really crucial question. I mean, without that question, this is just, these are so many words, you know, and my best answer to that question, the term probably in use, you know, the most frequently, and you know, is on this matter is restorative justice. Sometimes it's called transformative justice. It's, you know, it's the peace circle, it's the healing circle. I mean, but there's a whole movement, you know, that is, you know, or restorative practices, it's called in different, you know, where it's a whole movement of respectful practices. You know, it's in this in school systems. Our school systems, so many of them are in, you know, in big serious trouble, especially in the inner cities, you know, big classrooms, poverty neighborhoods, huge, you know, trouble. I mean, disrespect everywhere. And You know, and the movement for bringing restorative justice to the schools, or restorative practices, is one way that empathy begins, empathy begins to be created.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So it's using all these restorative processes. So it would be bringing in restorative processes into the schools and other places. These
Court
are
systems, that's another place where
court system.
Chicago, it's showing up. Some judges have become passionate believers in, you know, restorative practices. The juvenile court system in particular, but also something called parent and child court, which is for unmarried couples dealing with issues regarding their children, and the circle process is used wherever appropriate and both parties agree. You know, and it's had profound effects where you're not fighting it out in the court system. You're sitting in a circle where you listen, and, you know, where you speak honestly and listen to others as they speak honestly and tell the truth. things can be worked out in that way that cannot be worked out combatively.
Have you had personal experience with that, or have you just seen it from the outside, or how?
Well,
What's your?
I sat in a lot of circles, and the one circle that I sat in that was really regarding my own healing was a couple years ago. I was mugged walking home from. I parked my car on the street, and why I parked it on the street rather than my parking spot is a long story I won't go into. But I had about a 3-block walk to my house, and it was about not so late, 9:30 at night, and a bunch of young guys, maybe 4 of them, I think, ran up to me, and one guy took a swing and knocked me down, and they wouldn't let me up, and I shouted for help, and eventually the guys split. They ran off, and I got, hit in the face, but I was not robbed. But nonetheless, traumatic experience. It's the first time that's ever happened to me. In Chicago, I've been in Chicago 35 years, and that is the first time that sort of thing has ever happened to me. But we did a healing circle, which was, maybe there's maybe a dozen people came to this thing, and I talked about what happened to me. Other people talked and told stories about some traumatic experience. There was a great deal of love kind of surrounded the circle or filled the circle. I felt so much more love than I had felt pain.
Wow.
So that would be, I guess, my one personal experience. And I have not, I've yet to sit in, like, say, a circle regarding, wrongdoing or harm. I have sat in like practice circles where we've talked about that. I've not done the real thing, but I have talked to lots of people who have sat in those sorts of circles, and lots of important things come out of them, especially, and it's not, but these are not simple. You don't just quickly do it. There's no shortcuts. It may take a year. It may take a lot of circles before, like, say, the wrongdoer and the person who's victimized or traumatized can sit and look at each other and talk. And then there's an opportunity to apologize, an opportunity to forgive. And when apology and forgiveness happen, that's healing. That is when healing begins to happen. We can't advance in a society without healing.
Mm-hmm. Your video is a little slow. I'm going to disable my video stream to you, and you won't see me, but I'll still be recording something here. I'm hoping that I'll speed up the video a little bit.
Okay.
You can still hear me. Let's see. I guess, I've been really interested in the whole restorative practices as well. And for me, restorative practices is really, it's called restorative justice, but I think it would be more aptly called restorative empathy, that it's really restoring connection between people. The healing is really empathic healing for me. So it's the people talking with each other, getting to know each other, starting to feel each other. And it's like a real process that actually nurtures and fosters empathy.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I have not heard anyone use that term, restorative empathy, but that is the point.
I coined the term.
Okay, all right.
You heard it here first. I've taken mediation training, been in different circle type processes. And from what I've seen is it's really about empathy, and it seems like those processes grew out of the justice system to a lot extent. So they kind of use that vocabulary, but I think it's using empathy is actually a more accurate terminology, because the existing justice system is so based on punitive retribution, on competition. And this is really a whole different model of how you deal with conflict. You know, it's like,
absolutely a whole different model. It's, yeah, I mean, a better word than restorative is transformative too. I mean, conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. Conflict, you know, is how, you know, conflict is friction. There could be no violin music without friction. But it's how you, you know, it's how you use it. It's how you use that. And if it's conflict is always bad and we have to fight, that's how it'll, you know, we'll stay stuck. But if there is conflict and we both, you know, look at it with respect for one another, then you know, and honesty, and you know, and a commitment to find something that, you know, solves, you know, resolves it for both of us. What we'll have done is create something that's new, that has not, you know, yet existed, and you know, so that, you know, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And and our punitive justice system is not about anything like that. It's not about transformation. It's not about creativity, and it's not about healing. It's just about, in a linear sense, a bad person is punished. Then we mark that case closed. And there's no, you know, and the case is not closed at all.
Yeah, there's still, everything is going on. All the suffering is, a lot of the suffering is still there, and people, there's not really a sense of reconnecting.
Right, exactly.
People. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely.
Well, okay, that was your first point. You had, you'd sent me a couple of comments about your ideas of how to restore, I mean, create a culture of empathy, and the second one was personal awareness. What was...
Well, I think personal awareness is what we've been talking about. Certainly, you know, in my own case, you know, when I disrespected the postal worker, you know, when I, you know, or any number of stories I could pull out of my memory, boy, there was awareness. Awareness occurred, and you know, okay, Bob, let's calm down about this. Let's grow. You know, apologize, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, it's the journey of life, and you know, the journey of life is the journey of awareness, and you know, as we grow, I mean, there is no growth that does not involve empathy. I mean, or, you know, the only growth worth having. I mean, I guess there's sort of a cancerous kind of growth that is not a good thing, but the positive growth, the reason to be alive is to grow in empathy, and I think that requires awareness every step of the way. You know, when you're in a relationship, you have to stay aware of the other person and not take that other person for granted. And you know, in society, we have to remain aware of the consequences of our actions, the consequences of, you know, what I do, and to the extent that's harmful to other people or the environment. I mean, I think empathy doesn't just apply person to person, but can apply to toward our context, our our mother, the earth, the planet that sustains us. I think empathy is a word that can be applied in that way as well. But it's all a journey of awareness. Ecology is the science of environmental awareness, and it's not linear, simplistic, an impersonal, quote unquote, objective sort of science. I think it's a spiritual kind of science. As science ups its level of awareness, it embraces sort of a spiritual way of knowing, which other types of science maybe, distrust or even, make fun of.
Well, if you're saying awareness, it's like, where do we put our awareness? We can put the awareness just on ourselves, right?
Right.
Or we can put the awareness on, have some on ourselves, some on others, some at the wider, what's going on around us.
Right.
And
Exactly.
somehow to have empathy, it seems like it's a matter of opening our awareness to take in more that's around us.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yeah, it is it's an opening. It's an opening. It's a reaching beyond. It's reaching outside of our comfort zone. To stay in our comfort zone is to stay content with our level, our present level of awareness, or perhaps less than that. And to leave the comfort zone jolts us into, holy crap, where am I? And we have to, when we're in a new situation, a situation that may be, disturbing or frightening, awareness is activated, and we have to learn and see and grow. But but then our awareness expands, and
Mm-hmm. So, Tim, what you're talking about there, though, more is taking the awareness to where our fears are.
yes,
In a sense, it's like where's the fears around me, and how do I bring my awareness to those fears instead of maybe trying to suppress the fears or avoid the fears or
yeah,
what have you. Yeah.
absolutely, yes, that's exactly right. I think the where we're at, kind of the consensus level of our society is that what we do with our fears is go to war with them.
Yeah.
They
Uh-huh.
enemies. And when you think about how many, there's the real wars that we have out there that are now these endless wars against terror or evil or whatever, but everything is a war. Think about how many wars. The war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on whatever. I mean, I was reading a New York Times article a while ago talking about the war on childhood obesity. It's ridiculous. It's like, oh my God, fat kid at 4 o'clock, take him out with a missile strike.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like totally ridiculous. I mean,
The war on violence.
the war on violence, the war on cancer. We're losing all of these wars. Think about the war on drugs and how, when the war on drugs in this official sense started in the Reagan administration in 1980, there was a relatively small, the drug use was not what it is today. I mean, we've just expanded it, the violence, the people imprisoned, just, it's beyond the pale. Because we went to war with it and expanded everything.
Yeah. Well, what's the alternative? What would be a different word than the use? Like, how do we, instead of say a war, a battle on something, how do we evoke the vocabulary of empathy? Like, let's empathize with poverty, empathize with obesity, empathize with people who are on drugs, or what I mean? It's like, what's the vocabulary? What's the metaphor, right? Because war is kind of like this metaphor for how we're going to solve these problems.
Right, exactly, and that's an important question. With not necessarily a simple or one answer to that, but I would say, first of all, let's get rid of the enemies. I mean, maybe there are isolated cases where it is a simple linear, me versus you. I mean, a ping pong game. I mean, whatever, but it's usually not an enemy kind of situation. I mean, certainly the issue of, say, childhood obesity or any kind of obesity, I mean, it's complex, and and there's a lot of factors that go into it. Let's look at that and see what this is really all about before we even, start worrying about, what to call it. Let's look at it and see what it is. What might be causing it. And and there may be good and really positive things that are mixed up with things that are not. And so it gets all tangled. And when it's a simple enemy thing, take somebody out or take this out, do that, and we act like we're accomplishing something, and we're just spreading the problem. It just grows by leaps and bounds. Killing our enemy just never solves the problem. It usually expands it.
Hmm. Well, okay, so that you had 3 points, and the third one here that you'd sent me was be the media for building a culture of empathy. It's
Yeah.
what's that?
Well, that's what you're doing. I think that's what I'm doing as well. In other words, I mean, the the present
Oh,
technology.
just a minute. I just want. Sorry, Bob. There's the call is kind of degraded. What I want to do is just quickly hang up and call you right back, and hopefully
Okay,
that'll kind of improve
all right.
it.
Hello.
Yeah, you just need to turn your camera on.
Oh, is my camera not on?
Yeah, usually it starts off, and then you have to turn it on. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it looks a little better. It
Oh,
was starting to get very pixelated, so hopefully.
okay. All right.
So yeah, you were talking about the media, kind of like it's what we're doing and getting the word out, dialoguing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of opportunity for people to. I call it joining the national conversation. That's one way to look at it. I mean, I guess that's my personal, um, my personal quest, my personal mission, or my personal way of trying to further the idea of empathy. Is by speaking and writing about it, and and I think that the opportunity to do that is there, to reach people more than it ever has been, and so I think people who believe in this should believe with a um, should should believe in a way that is active. Um, and it certainly is involved, talking to people and standing up for what you believe in in a one-on-one sense, one-on-two sense, and that sort of thing. But find ways to express yourself and and bring greater empathy into the world.
Hmm. So kind of
Um,
stand for empathy and then start dialoguing about it. It's like this
yeah,
is what I
yeah,
believe in, and let's do
yeah,
it. Let's create a culture of empathy. Let's create more compassion,
yeah,
and let's kind of talk about it. What's the problem with that? Why don't you? Why are you for it, or why are you not for it? What And it's kind of like what we're doing. It's
right,
actually kind of one of the things I see with this conference is to read. I'm just trying to generate the dialogue. It's like get people in discussions, and there's 130 or something dialogues and panels, and it's
yes,
just showing people that hey, you can talk about this, you can engage
right.
in a dialogue, and let's start talk about it with your friends.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think what you're doing is very exciting, and that's exactly what I'm saying is, find your own creative outlets and let go like a child at this. I mean, be open, be reach out, find people, and spread the word. Shift the consciousness. I mean, at some point, I mean, I do believe at some point we will shift consciousness from where things are at. Even though sometimes I get very discouraged and it looks hopeless, but
Yeah, it's easy to get discouraged when things aren't changing, but
I
now we're starting to get into these conversations. I'd like to do more of them. And
yeah,
I'd like to get more journalists and writers involved in these dialogues, so maybe we can get
right.
some of those lined up. The connection's getting a little, it's starting to degrade, so I'm thinking maybe we would bring it to an end at this point
Okay,
because
sure. Okay.
the audio is starting to go in and out, so somehow the bandwidth or something's kind of gotten low. But I think we've really covered a lot of great topics.
I think
Respect,
so.
how respect relates to empathy. 3
I,
ways of building a culture of empathy. Using restorative processes, uh,
right.
opening our awareness, facing the fears, and starting to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this dialogue, and I look forward to, let's do some more of these.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I wish you the best of luck. This is great work. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, Bob.
Okay.
See the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.